The moment Anna Reeves realized her brother was not coming back, the December wind cut through her threadbare coat like a dozen knives, and she understood that dying alone in the Montana Territory was easier than anyone might think. She stood outside McGregor's trading post, her carpetbag at her feet, watching the trail where Thomas had disappeared 2 hours ago. He had told her to wait right there, that he needed to check on something in town, that he would return before the sun started its descent toward the mountains. But the pale winter sun was already touching the peaks, and the temperature was dropping fast. Anna pulled her coat tighter, though it did little good. The garment had been threadbare when she inherited it from their mother 3 years ago, and the journey west had worn it down to something that barely qualified as fabric. Other travelers came and went from the trading post. Men in heavy furs eyed her with curiosity or pity or something darker. She kept her gaze on the trail, willing Thomas to appear. He had been distant since they left Missouri 6 months ago, but she had attributed it to grief. Their father had died in the spring, leaving them with nothing but debts and the clothes on their backs. Thomas had promised her a new start in Oregon, had sworn they would build something together. That family meant everything. The lies had come so easily to him. A woman in a blue wool dress emerged from the trading post, her arms full of packages. She paused when she saw Anna, her expression softening. "Are you waiting for someone, dear?" "My brother," Anna said, and her voice sounded small against the vastness of the Montana landscape. "He will be back soon." The woman's eyes held doubt, but she nodded politely and continued to her wagon. Anna watched her drive away, and for the first time, a seed of true fear took root in her chest. The trading post sat at a crossroads 15 miles from the nearest town, a place where travelers stopped to resupply before continuing their journeys. It was not a place where anyone stayed, not in winter, not with snow clouds gathering on the horizon. By the time full dark arrived, Anna had to accept the truth. Thomas had abandoned her. Perhaps he had planned it from the beginning, or perhaps the burden of a 20-year-old sister had simply become too much somewhere along the trail. Either way, she was alone with 43 cents in her pocket, a carpetbag containing 2 dresses and a photograph of their parents, and nowhere to go. She could not stay outside. The temperature had plummeted, and her fingers were already numb despite being tucked under her arms. Anna picked up her bag and pushed through the trading post door, grateful for the wave of warmth that greeted her. The interior smelled of wood smoke, coffee, and the various goods that lined the shelves. Pelts hung from the rafters, and barrels of flour and sugar crowded the floor space. Behind the counter stood a man with gray whiskers and suspicious eyes. He looked at Anna the way one might look at a stray dog, with the certain knowledge that kindness would only create problems. "Help you?" he asked, though his tone suggested he hoped the answer was no. "I need a room for the night," Anna said, trying to sound more confident than she felt. $2. Her heart sank. "I do not have that much. Is there perhaps some work I could do? I can clean or cook or—" "Got no work for women here," the man interrupted. "This is a trading post, not a charity house. Please." Anna hated the desperation in her voice, but pride seemed like a luxury she could no longer afford. "My brother left me here. I have nowhere else to go." The man's expression didn't soften. "That is not my concern. You cannot stay here unless you pay." Anna felt tears prick at her eyes, but she refused to let them fall. She would not give this man the satisfaction of seeing her break. She was turning toward the door, trying to formulate some kind of plan, when a voice spoke from the corner of the room. "I will pay for her room." Anna turned to see a man rising from a chair near the fireplace. She hadn't noticed him when she entered, perhaps because he had been so still, or perhaps because the shadows had hidden him. Now, as he stepped into the lamplight, she found herself staring at someone who looked like he had been carved from the Montana landscape itself. He was tall, with broad shoulders, and the lean build of someone who spent his life in the saddle. Dark hair fell past his collar, and his face bore the weathered look of a man who lived outdoors more than in. But it was his eyes that caught her attention, gray-blue like a winter sky, studying her with an intensity that made her want to look away and step closer all at once. He appeared to be perhaps 26 or 27, old enough to have lived through some hard years, but young enough that they had not broken him. That is not necessary, Anna said, though even as she spoke, she knew she had no other options. Sure it is, the man said. His voice was low and rough, like gravel underfoot. Nobody should be outside in this weather. He approached the counter and placed several coins on the worn wood. The proprietor scooped them up quickly, as if worried the stranger might change his mind. Room 3, upstairs. There is a lock on the door. Anna felt her cheeks flush. The implication was clear, a warning that she should protect herself from strange men who paid for rooms for desperate women. But when she looked at the cowboy, she saw no predatory gleam in his eyes, only a kind of quiet assessment, as if he was trying to figure out a puzzle. Thank you, Anna said. I will repay you as soon as I am able. The corner of his mouth lifted slightly, not quite a smile. Do not worry about it. Get some rest. He returned to his chair by the fire, dismissing her as if the matter was settled. Anna clutched her carpet bag and climbed the narrow stairs, her mind spinning. The room was small and cold, furnished with only a narrow bed and a washstand, but it had walls and a roof, and that lock the proprietor had mentioned. She engaged it immediately, then sat on the bed and finally allowed herself to cry. The tears came hard and bitter, fueled by exhaustion and betrayal and fear. Thomas had been all she had left in the world, and he had discarded her like she was nothing. Anna cried until her throat was raw and her eyes burned, and then she lay down on the thin mattress and pulled the rough blanket over herself. Through the floorboards, she could hear the low murmur of voices from below, but she could not make out words. Eventually, the cold and her exhaustion dragged her into an uneasy sleep. She woke to pale morning light filtering through a gap in the curtains. For a moment, she could not remember where she was, and then the events of the previous day came rushing back. Anna sat up, her body stiff from the hard bed and the cold. Her breath misted in the air. She had slept in her dress and coat, not daring to undress in the unheated room. Downstairs, the trading post was quiet. The proprietor stood behind his counter, and the cowboy sat in the same chair as before, as if he had not moved all night. He had a cup of coffee in his hands and was staring into the fire with an expression of deep thought. When Anna reached the bottom of the stairs, he looked up and their eyes met. Morning, he said, and good morning. Anna hesitated, unsure of what came next. She needed to figure out where to go, what to do. The town 15 miles away might have opportunities, but walking that far in December seemed like a good way to freeze to death. Perhaps she could convince someone to give her a ride, or maybe there was work here after all, despite what the proprietor had said. The cowboy set down his coffee and stood. He was even taller than she had thought, and she had to tilt her head back to meet his eyes. You got a plan? The directness of the question caught her off guard. I am working on one. Your brother, he is not coming back. It was not a question, but Anna answered anyway. No, I do not believe he is. The cowboy nodded slowly, as if this confirmed something he had already suspected. Where were you headed before he left you here? Oregon. We were going to Homestead. The dream sounded foolish now, a fairy tale she had been naive enough to believe. You got people there? Someone waiting for you? No, it was just going to be Thomas and me. Anna felt the tears threatening again and forced them back. She would not cry in front of this stranger, not in the harsh light of morning. The cowboy was quiet for a long moment, and Anna could almost see him thinking, weighing options. Finally, he spoke. I have a ranch about 30 miles south of here. Small operation, just me and a couple of hands. I could use help with cooking and such. Pay is not much, but you would have a roof and meals. Anna stared at him. You are offering me a job? You do not even know me. I know you got left behind by someone who should have protected you. I know you are trying not to fall apart, even though you have every right to. That is enough. He paused, then added, Name is Fletcher Zimmerman. Anna Reeves. She searched his face for any sign of ulterior motives, but found only that same steady assessment. Why would you do this for a stranger? Fletcher looked away, back toward the fire. My sister died 3 years ago. Fever took her. She was about your age. I guess I would like to think someone would have helped her if she had needed it. The raw honesty in his voice made Anna's throat tight. Here was a man who had known loss, who understood what it meant to be alone. She thought about her options, which were essentially none, and made her decision. I accept, and thank you, Mr. Zimmerman. Fletcher is fine. He drained his coffee and set the cup on the mantel. We should leave soon. There is weather coming, and I would rather be home before it hits. 20 minutes later, Anna found herself sitting on a wagon seat beside Fletcher, her carpetbag at her feet, heading south on a road that cut through rolling hills dotted with pine trees. The sky was a flat gray, and the air had that heavy quality that promised snow. Fletcher drove with easy competence, his hands relaxed on the reins, his attention on the road and the surrounding landscape. For the first few miles, they rode in silence. Anna was acutely aware of him beside her, this stranger who had suddenly become her benefactor. She studied him from the corner of her eye, noting the way his jaw was set, the small scar above his left eyebrow, the calloused hands that spoke of hard work. He wore a heavy coat and a wide-brimmed hat, and a revolver rested in a holster on his hip. Everything about him spoke of capability, of a man who could survive in this harsh land. "Have you had the ranch long?" Anna asked, partly because the silence was becoming uncomfortable and partly because she genuinely wanted to know. 5 years. My father started it, but he passed 4 years back. Heart gave out. Fletcher kept his eyes on the road. It is not much, but it is mine. What do you raise? Cattle, mostly. Some horses. I sell to the army and to ranchers farther west. It is enough to get by. He glanced at her. You know how to cook? Yes. My mother taught me before she died. I have been keeping house for Thomas and my father for years. The bitterness crept into her voice despite her best efforts. All those years of taking care of her family, and Thomas had still left her behind like she was worthless. You are better off without him, Fletcher said bluntly. A man who would leave his sister at a trading post in winter is not worth grieving over. Anna blinked at him, surprised by the harsh assessment. But as she thought about it, she realized he was right. Thomas had shown his true character, and she needed to accept that and move forward. You are right. Thank you for saying it plainly. Fletcher nodded, and they fell back into silence. But this time, it felt more comfortable, like they had reached an understanding. The first snowflakes began to fall an hour into the journey. They were small and hesitant at first, but within minutes, they increased in intensity. Fletcher urged the horses into a faster pace, and Anna pulled her inadequate coat tighter. She was shivering within minutes, her teeth chattering despite her best efforts to control them. Here. Fletcher shrugged out of his coat and draped it over her shoulders before she could protest. The warmth was immediate and blessed, and Anna wanted to weep with relief. But you will freeze, she objected. I have another layer. You do not. Just take it. His tone brooked no argument. Anna pulled the coat around herself, grateful beyond words. It smelled like leather and wood smoke and something distinctly masculine. She found it oddly comforting. Thank you. The snow was falling heavily now, turning the landscape into a white blur. Anna could barely see 20 feet in front of them. She had no idea how Fletcher could tell where they were going, but he seemed confident, so she tried not to worry. The temperature continued to drop, and even with Fletcher's coat, Anna felt the cold seeping into her bones. There, Fletcher said suddenly, pointing ahead. Anna squinted through the snow and saw a dark shape emerging from the white. As they drew closer, it resolved into a ranch house, a sturdy structure made of logs with a pitched roof and a wide porch. Behind it, she could make out the shapes of other buildings, a barn and what might be a bunkhouse. Smoke rose from the chimney, a welcoming sign of warmth. Fletcher drove the wagon straight to the house and hopped down. He came around to Anna's side and offered his hand to help her down. His grip was strong and steady, and Anna found herself reluctant to let go. But she did, and Fletcher immediately ushered her toward the front door. The interior of the house was blessedly warm. A fire crackled in a large stone fireplace, and the smell of coffee lingered in the air. The main room served as both kitchen and living area, with a rough-hewn table, several chairs, and a cook stove in one corner. Stairs led to what Anna assumed was a loft or upper floor. "Let me show you where you will be staying," Fletcher said, leading her toward a door on the far side of the room. It opened into a small bedroom with a narrow bed, a dresser, and a window that looked out toward the barn. "This was my sister's room. Nobody has used it since she passed. You can make it your own." Anna set down her carpet bag and looked around. The room was simple but clean, and most importantly, it was warm. "It is perfect. Thank you." Fletcher nodded and turned to leave, then paused in the doorway. "Get yourself settled. I need to tend to the horses and check on my men. There is stew on the stove if you are hungry." He left before Anna could respond. She stood in the middle of the small room, trying to process the fact that less than 24 hours ago, she had been abandoned at a trading post with no prospects, and now she was in a warm house with the promise of work and safety. It felt surreal, like she might wake up and find herself back in that cold room above the trading post. But the warmth was real, and so was the bed, and so was the rumble of her empty stomach. Anna took off Fletcher's coat, laying it carefully over the back of the single chair in the room, and went to investigate the stew. It was thick and hearty, with chunks of beef and vegetables, and it was the best thing Anna had tasted in months. She ate 2 bowls, standing at the stove, and was considering a third when the door opened and Fletcher returned, along with 2 other men. They were both younger than Fletcher, probably close to Anna's age, and they looked at her with open curiosity. Fletcher made quick introductions. "Anna, this is Charlie and Ben. They work for me. Boys, this is Anna Reeves. She will be helping out around here, cooking and such." Charlie was short and stocky with red hair and a friendly face. Ben was taller and quieter, with dark eyes and a serious expression. Both nodded politely. "Pleased to meet you, madam," Charlie said. "It will be nice to have some decent cooking for a change. No offense, boss." Fletcher's mouth twitched. "None taken. You are right, my cooking is terrible." The easy camaraderie between the 3 men told Anna that this was a good place, that Fletcher was a good employer. She felt some of her tension ease. "I am happy to cook. It is the least I can do." Over the next few days, Anna settled into a routine. She woke early to start breakfast for the men, made sure they had hot coffee and plenty of food before they went out to tend the cattle and horses. Then she spent the day cleaning, mending clothes, and preparing dinner. The work was familiar and comforting, a reminder that she had value, that she could contribute. Fletcher was respectful and distant, treating her like any other employee. He was gone most of the day, working outside in the brutal cold, and when he came in, he was quiet, eating his meals and then retreating to his own room upstairs. Anna told herself she was grateful for the distance, that it was appropriate and professional, but she could not help noticing things about him. The way he always made sure the wood box was full before going to bed, the gentleness with which he handled a lame horse, the way his eyes softened when Charlie told a joke. Christmas came and went with little fanfare. Fletcher gave each of them a small bonus, and Anna used part of hers to buy fabric in town to make new curtains for the kitchen. It was a small thing, but it made the house feel more like a home. She caught Fletcher looking at the curtains with an expression she could not quite read, something like surprise and pleasure mixed together. January brought even colder weather and more snow. The men worked in shifts, making sure the cattle had access to food and water, breaking ice on the creek, checking for strays. It was brutal work, and they came in each night exhausted and half frozen. Anna made sure there was always hot food waiting and strong coffee, and slowly she saw them relax around her, treating her less like a stranger and more like part of the ranch. One evening in late January, Fletcher came in alone. Charlie and Ben had ridden out to the far pasture to check on some cows and would not be back until morning. Fletcher stamped the snow off his boots and hung his hat on the peg by the door, then stood by the fire, warming his hands. Dinner will be ready soon, Anna said from the stove. She was making roast chicken, a rare treat, and biscuits. Smells good. Fletcher moved to the table and sat down heavily, fatigue evident in every line of his body. Anna brought him coffee, and their fingers brushed as he took the cup. The contact sent a jolt through her, unexpected and electric. She pulled her hand back quickly, but not before she saw something flicker in Fletcher's eyes, an awareness that matched her own. "Thank you," he said, his voice rougher than usual. Anna retreated to the stove, her heart pounding. She told herself it meant nothing, that she was simply grateful to him for his kindness, that the isolation of the ranch was making her imagine things. But as she served dinner and they ate together in the quiet house, she could not deny the tension that had suddenly appeared between them. "Anna," Fletcher said suddenly, setting down his fork, "I need to say something." Her pulse quickened. "Yes?" He was quiet for a moment, as if choosing his words carefully. "You have been here almost 2 months now. You have more than earned your keep. If you want to leave, go to a town and make a different life, I will give you money for the journey and a reference for work. I do not want you to feel obligated to stay." The offer was generous and thoughtful, and it made Anna's chest ache. "Do you want me to leave?" "No." The word came out more forcefully than she expected. Fletcher looked down at his plate. "But what I want is not the point. You deserve choices, not just to be stuck here because you have nowhere else to go." Anna set down her own fork and looked at him directly. "I choose to stay, not because I have nowhere else to go, but because I want to be here." Fletcher's eyes met hers, and the intensity in them made her breath catch. Why? She could have given him a dozen practical reasons, but suddenly Anna was tired of pretending. "Because of you. Because you are a good man, and I feel safe here. Because when I look at you, I see someone I could—" She trailed off, unable to finish the sentence. "Someone you could what?" Fletcher's voice was barely above a whisper. "Someone I could love," Anna said, her heart in her throat. "If you would let me." The silence that followed was excruciating. Anna watched a dozen emotions cross Fletcher's face: surprise, longing, fear, and finally, something that looked like hope. "I have been trying not to care about you," Fletcher said finally. "From the moment I saw you at that trading post, looking so lost and brave, I knew you were dangerous. I told myself I was just helping someone in need, that it did not mean anything. But every day you make it harder to pretend." "Then stop pretending," Anna said. Fletcher stood up so abruptly that his chair scraped against the floor. For a moment, Anna thought he might leave, might retreat to his room and pretend this conversation had never happened. But instead, he crossed to her side of the table and held out his hand. Anna took it, and Fletcher pulled her to her feet. They stood inches apart, and she could feel the heat radiating from his body, could see the pulse beating in his throat. "I am not good with words," Fletcher said, his voice rough with emotion. "But I care about you, Anna. More than I should, more than is probably wise. You have turned this house into a home again. You have made me remember what it is like to look forward to coming inside at the end of the day. If you are sure this is what you want, then I am yours." In answer, Anna rose on her toes and kissed him. It was her first kiss, unpracticed and probably clumsy, but Fletcher did not seem to mind. His arms came around her, holding her close, and he kissed her back with a tenderness that made her eyes sting with tears. When they finally pulled apart, both breathing hard, Fletcher rested his forehead against hers. "We will do this right. I will court you properly, and when enough time has passed, I will ask you to marry me. If that is what you want, that is what I want, Anna said, unable to keep the smile from her face. More than anything, the next few months were the happiest of Anna's life. True to his word, Fletcher courted her with an old-fashioned formality that made her fall even more deeply in love with him. He brought her wildflowers from the hills, taught her to ride one of the gentler horses, sat with her in the evenings, and talked about his dreams for the ranch. Charlie and Ben figured out what was happening almost immediately and teased Fletcher mercilessly, but Anna could see the genuine happiness in their eyes. They had become like family, all of them, bound together by the harsh land and the work that sustained them. In March, the weather began to warm and the ranch came alive with activity. Calves were born, and Anna helped with the bottle feeding when mothers rejected their young. She proved to have a gentle touch with the animals, and Fletcher started consulting her on decisions about the livestock. It made her feel valued in a way she never had before, not just as someone who cooked and cleaned, but as a true partner. One evening in early April, as they sat on the porch watching the sun set behind the mountains, Fletcher took her hand. Anna Reeves, will you marry me? He did not have a ring, but Anna did not care. Yes, she said, tears streaming down her face. Yes, 1,000 times yes. They were married in May by a traveling preacher who passed through on his circuit. The ceremony was simple, held in the ranch house with Charlie and Ben as witnesses and a few neighbors who had become friends over the winter. Anna wore a new dress that Fletcher had surprised her with, pale blue with lace at the collar, and she carried a bouquet of the same wildflowers he had been bringing her for months. When the preacher pronounced them husband and wife, Fletcher kissed her with a passion that made her blush and made Charlie whistle appreciatively. But Anna did not care about propriety in that moment. She was married to a man she loved, a man who had saved her life and then given her a reason to truly live. Their wedding night was tender and awkward and perfect. Fletcher was patient with her inexperience, and Anna discovered that giving yourself to someone you loved was nothing to fear. They lay together afterward, wrapped in each other's arms, and Anna thought about how far she had come from that freezing day at the trading post. She had been abandoned and lost, and she had found everything she had ever wanted. The summer was busy with work. The ranch thrived under their combined efforts, and Fletcher was able to buy more cattle and hire another hand. Anna transformed the house into a true home, adding touches of comfort and beauty wherever she could. She planted a garden that yielded vegetables for the table and herbs for cooking and medicine. In the evenings, Fletcher taught her to read the accounts, explaining the business side of ranching, treating her as an equal partner in every way. By autumn, Anna knew she was pregnant. She had suspected for a few weeks, but she waited to tell Fletcher until she was certain. One morning over breakfast, with Charlie and Ben mercifully absent, she simply said, "We are going to have a baby." Fletcher froze, his coffee cup halfway to his mouth. Then a smile spread across his face, so wide and genuine that it transformed him. He set down the cup, came around the table, and lifted Anna out of her chair, spinning her around despite her laughing protests. "A baby," he said, his voice full of wonder. "We are going to be parents. Are you happy?" Anna asked, though the answer was obvious. Happy does not even begin to cover it. Fletcher set her down gently, as if she might break, and placed his hand on her still flat stomach. "When?" "March, I think. Or early April." The pregnancy was difficult at times. Anna suffered from sickness in the early months, and Fletcher was so worried about her that he barely let her lift a finger. Anna had to insist that she was not made of glass, that she could still cook and do light chores. Eventually, they reached a compromise, with Anna doing what she felt capable of and Fletcher and the men picking up the slack. As winter set in again, nearly a year after Anna had first arrived at the ranch, she found herself thinking about how much had changed. She had gone from being abandoned and terrified to being loved and secure, from having nothing to having everything that mattered. Some nights, she still woke from nightmares about Thomas leaving her at the trading post, but Fletcher was always there, pulling her close and reminding her that she was safe. The baby arrived in late March during a late season snowstorm. The midwife from town had come to stay a week earlier, anticipating the birth, and it was fortunate she had. The labor was long and painful, and there were moments when Anna thought she might not survive. But Fletcher stayed with her the entire time, holding her hand and talking to her, refusing to leave even when the midwife suggested he might be more comfortable elsewhere. I am not leaving her, Fletcher said firmly. She needs me. And Anna did need him. His presence gave her strength, and when their son finally entered the world with a lusty cry, Anna saw tears streaming down Fletcher's face. A boy, the midwife announced, cleaning the baby and wrapping him in a soft blanket. Healthy and strong. She placed the baby in Anna's arms, and Anna looked down at the tiny face, the miniature fingers, the dark hair that looked so much like Fletcher's. Love overwhelmed her, fierce and protective and all-consuming. He is perfect, Fletcher said, his voice choked with emotion. You are amazing. Thank you. They named him Daniel after Fletcher's father, and the entire ranch celebrated his arrival. Charlie and Ben acted like proud uncles, and even the gruff old cowhand they had hired in the summer softened when he saw the baby. The first year of Daniel's life passed in a blur of sleepless nights and precious moments. Anna had never been so tired or so happy. She watched Fletcher transform into a devoted father, gentle and patient with their son, singing to him and playing with him whenever his work allowed. The ranch continued to prosper, and they hired 2 more hands, expanding their operation. When Daniel was a year old, Anna discovered she was pregnant again. This time the pregnancy was easier, and in the spring of 1883, they welcomed a daughter into the world. They named her Caroline, after Anna's mother, and she had Anna's green eyes and Fletcher's stubborn chin. Life settled into a rhythm of work and family, of hard times and good times. The ranch grew steadily, becoming one of the more successful operations in the region. Fletcher brought in better breeding stock, and Anna's garden expanded to include flowers as well as vegetables. They added onto the house, building more bedrooms for their growing family and a proper parlor for receiving guests. In 1885, they had another son, James, who was quiet and thoughtful from birth, and in 1887, twin daughters arrived, causing chaos and joy in equal measure. They named them Margaret and Elizabeth, and they were identical in appearance but opposite in temperament. The years passed, marked by the seasons and the rhythms of ranch life. Anna watched her children grow, teaching them to read and to appreciate the land that sustained them. Fletcher taught the boys to ride and work cattle, and insisted that the girls learn as well, saying that anyone who lived on a ranch needed to be capable. Daniel grew into a serious young man with his father's work ethic and his mother's compassion. Caroline was spirited and independent, always pushing boundaries. James was the dreamer, more interested in books than cattle, and the twins were a force of nature, inseparable and mischievous. Through it all, Anna's love for Fletcher only deepened. They had their arguments, as any couple did, but they always came back to each other. Fletcher never lost the habit of bringing her wildflowers, and Anna never stopped feeling grateful that he had walked into that trading post on a winter day and changed her life forever. One evening in the summer of 1892, Anna stood on the porch watching the sunset. The children were inside, the older ones helping the younger with their bedtime routine. Fletcher came up behind her and wrapped his arms around her waist, resting his chin on her shoulder. "What are you thinking about?" he asked. "About the day Thomas left me," Anna said. "I was so scared. I thought my life was over." Fletcher tensed slightly. He still harbored anger toward the brother who had abandoned Anna, though Thomas himself had never been seen or heard from again. And now? Now I know it was the beginning. If he had not left me there, I would never have met you. We would not have all of this. She gestured toward the ranch, the land bathed in golden light, the house full of their children. I would not trade a single day of our life together for anything. Neither would I, Fletcher said. He turned her in his arms so they were facing each other. You saved me too, you know. This ranch was just a place before you came. You made it a home. You made me remember how to be happy. Anna reached up and touched his face, feeling the lines that the years had added, the gray that was starting to appear in his hair. They were both older now, marked by time and work and parenthood, but the connection between them was as strong as ever. I love you, she said simply. I love you too. Always have, from the moment I saw you standing in that trading post, trying so hard to be brave. They kissed, and it was sweet and familiar, and still carried that spark that had drawn them together all those years ago. When they pulled apart, Fletcher took her hand. Come on, let us go inside and check on our wild bunch before they destroy something. Anna laughed and let him lead her into the house. Inside, chaos reigned. The twins were chasing James through the kitchen while Daniel tried to catch them, and Caroline sat at the table, calmly reading a book and ignoring the mayhem around her. All right, you lot, Fletcher said, his voice carrying over the noise. Time to settle down. The children obeyed immediately, as they always did when Fletcher used that particular tone. He had never raised a hand to any of them, but his authority was absolute, earned through love and fairness. As Anna helped get the children settled for the night, tucking each one into bed and listening to their prayers, she felt that familiar sense of gratitude wash over her. This life, this family, this man who had taken a chance on a desperate woman at a trading post, all of it was more than she had ever dreamed possible. Later, lying in bed beside Fletcher, Anna thought about the future. Daniel would likely take over the ranch someday, though Fletcher insisted that any of the children who wanted to stay could have a place. Caroline talked about becoming a teacher, and Fletcher was already making inquiries about schools where she could get proper training. James wanted to be a writer, much to everyone's surprise, and the twins were too young to know what they wanted beyond more cookies and staying up past their bedtime. What are you smiling about? Fletcher asked, pulling her closer. Everything, Anna said. Our children, the ranch, us. I was just thinking about how blessed we are. We are, Fletcher agreed. Though it is not all luck, we worked for this, both of us, built it together. He was right. The ranch's success was not just fortune, but the result of years of hard work, smart decisions, and their partnership. They had faced droughts and harsh winters, disease that took some of their cattle, and the general struggles that came with ranching, but they had faced it all together. And that had made all the difference. Do you ever wonder about Thomas? Fletcher asked quietly. What happened to him? Anna considered the question. She had thought about her brother less and less over the years, the anger and hurt fading into something more like pity. Sometimes, I hope he found whatever he was looking for, though I doubt he did. People who run from responsibility usually just find more trouble. Do you forgive him? I think so. Not because he deserves it, but because holding on to anger would only hurt me. And how can I be angry when his abandoning me led to this life? She turned to look at Fletcher in the dim light. He did me a favor, even if he did not mean to. Fletcher kissed her forehead. You are a better person than I am. I still want to punch him if I ever see him. Anna laughed softly. You will not get the chance. He is probably on the other side of the country by now, if he is even still alive. They fell silent, and Anna felt herself drifting towards sleep. But Fletcher spoke again, his voice thoughtful. When I saw you at that trading post, I knew I had to help, but I did not expect to fall in love with you. I thought I would give you a job, keep you safe for a while, and then you would move on. Instead, you became everything. Anna's throat tightened with emotion. Even after all these years, Fletcher could still say things that made her heart swell. You became everything to me, too. You showed me what it means to be truly cared for, to be valued. You gave me a family and a home, and a love I did not even know existed. We gave each other those things, Fletcher corrected. This only worked because we both chose it, every day. He was right about that, too. Love was not just a feeling, but a choice, a commitment renewed every morning when they woke up and every night when they went to bed. Through the hard times and the good times, they had chosen each other, and that choice had built something strong and lasting. The years continued to pass, each one bringing new challenges and new joys. In 1895, Daniel married a girl from a neighboring ranch, a sensible young woman named Sarah who fit into the family as if she had always been there. They built a house on the eastern section of the ranch, and soon Anna had grandchildren to dote on. Caroline did become a teacher, attending a normal school in Helena and returning to teach at the small schoolhouse that had been built to serve the ranching families in the area. She met a merchant's son and married him in a quiet ceremony, moving to town but visiting the ranch often. James surprised everyone by staying on the ranch despite his literary ambitions. He discovered that he could write about the West, about the land and the people who worked it, and his stories began appearing in magazines back east. He married late to a widow with 2 children and brought them all to live on the ranch. The twins remained unmarried longer than anyone expected, too busy exploring and causing trouble to settle down. But eventually, Margaret fell in love with a horse trader, and Elizabeth married a young lawyer who set up practice in town. Both couples stayed close to the ranch, and the family gatherings grew larger and louder with each passing year. Through it all, Fletcher and Anna remained the center, the foundation on which the family was built. Fletcher's hair turned fully gray, and his face bore the lines of a life spent outdoors, but he was still strong and capable, still the man Anna had fallen in love with. Anna's hair showed silver threads, and her hands were worn from years of work, but she moved through her days with the confidence of a woman who knew her worth. In the spring of 1900, they celebrated their 19th wedding anniversary. The children threw them a party, inviting neighbors and friends from town, and the ranch house was full of laughter and music. Anna danced with Fletcher in the parlor, their children and grandchildren watching with affection. "Can you believe it has been 19 years?" Anna asked as they swayed to the music. "Feels like both forever and no time at all," Fletcher said. "I still remember that first day like it was yesterday. You standing there in the snow, trying not to show how scared you were." "I was terrified," Anna admitted. "But then you said you would help, and I felt hope for the first time in days. Best decision I ever made, talking to you. Changed everything." They continued to dance, and Anna rested her head on Fletcher's shoulder, feeling utterly content. The house was full of family, the ranch was thriving, and she was exactly where she belonged. As the years moved into the new century, Anna and Fletcher gradually stepped back from the day-to-day running of the ranch. Daniel took over most of the operations, proving himself to be as capable as his father. But Fletcher still went out every day, checking on the cattle and horses, unable to fully retire from the work that had defined his life. Anna spent her time tending her garden, which had become legendary in the area, and helping with the grandchildren. She had 9 by 1903 with more on the way, and she loved each one fiercely. She told them stories about the old days, about coming west and building a life from nothing, wanting them to understand the value of hard work and family. One day in the summer of 1905, Anna was working in her garden when Fletcher came to find her. He had been into town for supplies and had an odd expression on his face. "What is wrong?" Anna asked, standing up and brushing dirt from her hands. "Nothing is wrong exactly. I just heard something in town. Thought you should know." Fletcher paused, then continued. "Your brother Thomas died. Telegram came for the sheriff, asking if anyone in the area was related to a Thomas Reeves from Missouri." Anna felt a strange mix of emotions, none of them particularly strong. "When?" "Few weeks ago, apparently." "He was in California. Pneumonia." Fletcher watched her carefully. "The telegram said he had no family, no money for burial. They put him in a pauper's grave." Anna was quiet for a moment, thinking about the brother who had abandoned her all those years ago. She felt sadness, but it was distant, like grieving for a stranger. Thank you for telling me. Are you all right? Yes. It is strange, but I feel like I said goodbye to Thomas a long time ago. Whatever happened to him after he left me at that trading post, it was his own doing. I made my peace with it years ago. She looked at Fletcher, at the concern in his eyes. My family is here now. You and the children and the grandchildren. That is all that matters. Fletcher pulled her into his arms, and Anna leaned into his embrace, grateful as always for his solid presence. Thomas's death closed a chapter of her life, but it was a chapter that had ended long ago, truly. The life she had built with Fletcher was the only story that mattered now. More years passed, bringing the changes that time always brings. Fletcher's health began to decline in his early 60s, a persistent cough that worried Anna. But he refused to slow down, insisting he was fine, that he just needed to work through it. It took Anna, Daniel, and the doctor all ganging up on him to convince him to rest more and let the younger generation handle the harder physical work. I am not an invalid, Fletcher grumbled, sitting on the porch in a rocking chair that Anna had insisted he use. No one said you were, Anna replied, sitting beside him with her knitting. But you have been working this ranch for 40 years. You are allowed to take it easier. When did we get old? Fletcher asked, looking at his weathered hands. Gradually, and then all at once, Anna said with a smile. But I do not mind it. We had our youth, and we did amazing things with it. Now we get to enjoy what we built. Fletcher reached over and took her hand, threading his fingers through hers. I do not regret a single day with you. Even the hard ones were worth it because you were there. I feel the same, Anna said softly. You saved me, Fletcher. In every way a person can be saved. We saved each other, he insisted, as he had so many times over the years. They sat together in comfortable silence, watching the sun set over the land they had worked and loved for decades. Around them, the ranch bustled with activity, grandchildren playing in the yard, Daniel and his sons driving cattle to a new pasture, Caroline's daughters helping in the garden. It was a living legacy, proof that what they had built together would endure. In 1910, as they approached their 30th anniversary, Anna woke one morning to find Fletcher struggling to breathe. She immediately sent for the doctor, but she knew in her heart what was happening. The cough that had plagued him for years had worsened, and his lungs were failing. The doctor confirmed it. Fletcher had consumption, and there was nothing to be done but make him comfortable. The children gathered, bringing the grandchildren, and the house filled with family. Fletcher held court from his bed, talking to each child and grandchild, offering advice and love and memories. When they were finally alone, Anna lay down beside Fletcher, careful not to jostle him. He turned his head to look at her, and despite his illness, his eyes were clear and full of love. I am not ready to leave you, he said, his voice weak. I am not ready to let you go, Anna replied, tears streaming down her face. But I will not be selfish. If you need to rest, I understand. All those years ago, when I paid for your room at that trading post, I thought I was just doing a good deed. I had no idea I was meeting my future, my everything. Fletcher paused to catch his breath. You made my life complete, Anna. Every day with you was a gift. You were my miracle, Anna said, her voice breaking. You appeared when I had nothing and gave me everything. I have loved you every day since. Take care of our family. Tell them stories about the old days, about how we built this place. Make sure they know how much I loved them all. Fletcher's breathing was getting more labored. And know that I will be waiting for you whenever you are ready. We will have eternity together. I will find you, Anna promised. No matter where you are, I will find you. Fletcher smiled, and then his eyes closed. His breathing grew shallower, and Anna held his hand, singing softly the songs he had loved. As the sun rose on a May morning in 1910, Fletcher Zimmerman took his last breath, surrounded by his family, with the woman he loved beside him. The grief was overwhelming. Anna felt like part of her had been torn away, leaving a wound that would never fully heal. But she was sustained by her children and grandchildren, by the ranch that Fletcher had built, by the memories of 30 years of love and partnership. She lived another 15 years, watching her grandchildren grow and have children of their own. She tended her garden and told stories and made sure that everyone knew about Fletcher, about his kindness and strength and love. The ranch continued to thrive under Daniel's management and then under his sons after him. Anna never remarried. When people asked why, she simply said that she had already lived a great love story and nothing could compare. She kept Fletcher's memory alive in everything she did, and when she finally passed away peacefully in her sleep in 1925, at the age of 65, her family buried her beside Fletcher on a hill overlooking the ranch, just as she had requested. On her headstone, beneath her name and dates, Daniel had inscribed the words she had made him promise to include. He found me in winter and gave me home. Together, we built forever. The ranch continued for generations, passed down through the family, a testament to what two people could build when they chose love and partnership. And sometimes, on quiet evenings, those who lived there swore they could see two figures walking together across the land, hand in hand, still choosing each other even in eternity. The story of Anna Reeves and Fletcher Zimmerman became family legend, told and retold to each new generation. It was a story about second chances and unexpected blessings, about a woman who was abandoned and a man who chose to help, about how a single act of kindness could change the course of two lives. It was about hard work and building something lasting, about facing challenges together and never giving up on each other. But most of all, it was a love story, pure and true and enduring. It was proof that sometimes being left behind is actually being set free, that sometimes losing everything is the first step toward finding what really matters. Anna had been abandoned at a trading post in winter, scared and alone, and Fletcher had said those life-changing words, "I will take you home now." And he had, in every sense that mattered. He had given her a physical home, yes, but more importantly, he had given her a home in his heart, a place where she was valued and cherished and loved beyond measure. Their descendants still worked the ranch in Montana, tending the land and the animals just as Fletcher and Anna had done. They faced their own challenges, adapted to changing times, but they held on to the values their ancestors had instilled: hard work, family, and love. When times got tough, they remembered the story of how it all began, of a abandoned woman and a cowboy with a kind heart, and they found strength in that legacy. The house still stood, expanded and modernized, but with the original log structure at its core. Anna's garden still bloomed every summer, tended by the women of the family who saw it as their connection to the woman who had started it all. Fletcher's saddle hung in the barn, preserved as a family treasure, along with the worn Bible he had carried and the photograph of him and Anna on their wedding day. Sometimes tourists would pass by, drawn by the beauty of the land or looking for a ranch to buy supplies from, and they would ask about the history. The current generation would tell them the story about Anna and Fletcher and how love had built this place. Some listeners would smile politely and move on, but others would get a distant look in their eyes, perhaps thinking about their own love stories, their own moments of being found when they were lost, because that was the universal truth at the heart of Anna and Fletcher's story. Everyone wants to be found, to be chosen, to be loved despite their circumstances. Everyone dreams of that moment when someone looks at them and decides they are worth saving, worth fighting for, worth building a life with. Anna had found that in Fletcher, and Fletcher had found it in Anna. Two people who had both known loss and loneliness, who had both understood what it meant to be alone in a harsh world, had found each other and created something beautiful. They had taken the raw materials of the Montana wilderness and their own determination and built not just a ranch, but a legacy of love that would outlast them both. On winter days, when snow covered the land and the wind howled around the buildings, the family would gather in the warm house and someone would inevitably say, "Tell us again about how great-grandma Anna and great-grandpa Fletcher met." And the story would be told once more, polished by repetition but never losing its power. The children would listen wide-eyed to the tale of abandonment and rescue, of a desperate woman and a compassionate cowboy, of love blooming in the unlikeliest of circumstances. And each time the story was told, it reinforced the values that Anna and Fletcher had lived by, that kindness matters, that second chances exist, that love can triumph over any obstacle if two people are willing to work for it. It reminded each new generation that they came from strong stock, from people who had faced the worst and still chosen hope, who had known hardship and still chosen love. The trading post where it all began was long gone, replaced by a modern gas station and convenience store. But sometimes, passing travelers would stop and feel an inexplicable warmth, as if something significant had happened in that place, as if the very ground remembered a moment when one person chose to help another and changed the course of two lives forever. The ranch itself became a landmark, known throughout Montana, not just for its success, but for its story. Other ranchers would point to it as an example of what could be built through hard work and partnership. Young couples starting out would visit, hoping some of that lasting love would rub off on them. The family welcomed visitors, understanding that Anna and Fletcher's story belonged not just to them, but to everyone who believed in second chances and the transformative power of love. As decades turned into a century and beyond, the world changed dramatically around the ranch. Technology advanced, society evolved, but the core values that Anna and Fletcher had established remained constant. The land still needed to be worked, the cattle still needed to be tended, and family still mattered above all else. Each generation added their own chapter to the story, but they all acknowledged that it had begun with a woman abandoned in winter and a cowboy who refused to leave her behind. Anna's descendants included teachers and doctors, ranchers and artists, business people and missionaries. They spread across the country and the world, but they all knew where they came from. All carried the story of their ancestors who had loved so completely and built so well. When they faced their own hardships, they thought of Anna standing alone at that trading post, scared but refusing to give up. When they doubted themselves, they remembered Fletcher choosing kindness over indifference, choosing to help rather than to walk away. The love story of Anna Reeves and Fletcher Zimmerman had become more than just family history. It had become a touchstone, a reminder that even in the darkest moments, hope exists. That sometimes the worst thing that happens to us opens the door to the best thing. That being abandoned can lead to being found in ways we never imagined. And so the ranch continued, season after season, year after year, generation after generation. The land that had witnessed the beginning of Anna and Fletcher's love story continued to shelter their descendants, to provide for them, to remind them of where they came from and the values they carried forward. The mountains stood eternal in the distance, the same mountains that Anna had seen on that terrible day when she realized her brother was not coming back, the same mountains that had watched her find love and build a life beyond her wildest dreams. In the end, Anna and Fletcher's story was a testament to the resilience of the human heart, to the possibility of redemption and second chances, to the power of choosing love even when circumstances suggest despair. It was a story that began with an ending, with a brother's betrayal and a sister's abandonment, and transformed into a beginning, into love and family, and a legacy that would endure for generations. It was, quite simply, a story about coming home, about finding the place and the person where you belong. Anna had been lost, and Fletcher had found her. Together, they had created a home that was more than just walls and roof, more than just land and cattle. They had created a sanctuary built on love, trust, and partnership, and that sanctuary had sheltered not just them, but countless others who came after. And that, perhaps, is the greatest legacy anyone can leave. Not just descendants or property or wealth, but proof that love matters, that kindness changes lives, that choosing to help one person can ripple outward in ways we can never fully measure. Fletcher had chosen to help Anna on a winter day in 1880, and that single choice had created a love story that would be told for more than a century and beyond, inspiring each new generation to believe in the transformative power of compassion and love.